When Rebecca Martinez walked into the Northfield Research Institute that Tuesday morning, she had no idea that by lunch, armed federal agents would be escorting her from the building in handcuffs. What started as a routine security audit would uncover something so classified that even the investigators didn't have clearance to know what they'd stumbled upon. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning began like any other at Northfield Research Institute, a nondescript government contractor facility nestled in the hills outside Albuquerque, New Mexico. Rebecca Martinez, a 34-year-old data analyst, swiped her badge at the security checkpoint just after 7:30 a.m., same as she had every weekday for the past 3 years. The guard, Tony Castellanos, gave her his usual nod and returned to his crossword puzzle. Rebecca's workstation sat in the middle of Building C's third floor, surrounded by a maze of identical cubicles where dozens of analysts pored over satellite imagery, communication intercepts, and various classified documents. Her specialty was pattern recognition in financial data streams, tracking unusual monetary flows that might indicate terrorist financing or foreign intelligence operations. It was meticulous, often tedious work, but Rebecca found satisfaction in connecting dots that others missed. The trouble began when Agent Patricia Hawkins from the Defense Security Service arrived for what was supposed to be a routine periodic review of security protocols. These audits happened every 18 months and typically involved checking badge access logs, interviewing random employees, and ensuring classified materials were properly secured, nothing that would normally disrupt anyone's day. But Agent Hawkins was thorough, perhaps too thorough. As she reviewed access logs from the past 6 months, she noticed something that made her pause. Rebecca Martinez's badge had been used to access areas of the facility that seemed inconsistent with her job description. Building A's basement level, the restricted communications center on the 5th floor, and most puzzling of all, the executive conference room that housed the facility's most sensitive briefings. "Excuse me," Agent Hawkins approached Rebecca's supervisor, David Chen, a soft-spoken man in his 50s who managed the financial analysis department. "I need to ask about one of your employees, Rebecca Martinez." David looked up from his computer screen, adjusting his glasses. "Rebecca? What about her?" "Her access logs show some unusual patterns. She's been entering areas that don't seem related to financial analysis work. Can you explain why she'd need access to the communication center?" David frowned, pulling up Rebecca's employee file on his computer. "That doesn't sound right. Rebecca handles monetary flow analysis. She shouldn't need access to communications. Are you sure you have the right person?" Agent Hawkins showed him the access log printout. There it was, clear as day. Rebecca Martinez, employee ID 4471, accessing restricted areas at various times over the past several months. Some of the entries were after normal business hours, which was even more concerning. "I'll need to speak with her immediately," Agent Hawkins said. Rebecca was deep in analyzing a complex series of wire transfers between shell companies in Cyprus when Agent Hawkins appeared at her cubicle. "Miss Martinez, I'm Agent Hawkins with the Defense Security Service. I need to ask you a few questions." The blood drained from Rebecca's face. In the world of classified work, a visit from the DSS was never good news. Is there a problem? "Let's talk privately." Agent Hawkins gestured toward a small conference room near the elevators. As they walked, Rebecca's mind raced. Had she made a mistake in handling classified information? Had she inadvertently accessed something she shouldn't have? She'd always been careful about following security protocols, but the rules were complex and constantly changing. In the conference room, Agent Hawkins spread out the access logs on the table. "Can you explain these? Your badge was used to access areas that don't align with your job description." Rebecca stared at the papers, genuinely confused. "I don't understand. I've never been to the communications center, and I definitely haven't been in the executive conference room." "Your badge shows otherwise." "Then someone else must have used my badge. Maybe it was cloned or duplicated somehow?" Agent Hawkins had heard this excuse before. Miss Martinez, badge cloning is extremely difficult with our current security system. The more likely explanation is that you're not being truthful about your activities. I am being truthful. Rebecca's voice rose slightly. I work in financial analysis. I sit at my desk, I analyze data, I write reports. That's it. What's your current security clearance level? Secret, same as everyone else in my department. Agent Hawkins made a note. I'm going to need to verify that. In the meantime, I'm suspending your access to classified materials pending investigation. Rebecca felt the room spinning. A suspended clearance meant she couldn't do her job. It meant her career was effectively over. In the defense contracting world, losing your clearance was like a doctor losing their medical license. There has to be some mistake, she insisted. We'll find out. Please surrender your badge and any classified materials in your possession. The next hour was a blur of humiliation. Rebecca had to clean out her desk while Agent Hawkins watched, placing any work-related documents in a secure bag. Her colleagues stared as she was escorted to the security office. Whispers followed her down the hallway. Everyone knew that when the DSS got involved, someone's career was about to end. At the security office, Agent Hawkins began the formal interview process. I need you to account for your whereabouts on these dates, she said, pointing to specific entries in the access log. Rebecca tried to remember. October 15th at 9:47 p.m.? I was at home watching Netflix. I can show you my viewing history if you want. That won't be necessary right now. What about November 3rd at 6:23 a.m.? I'm never here that early. My shift doesn't start until 7:30. The questions continued for another 30 minutes. Each entry in the access log seemed to correspond to times when Rebecca claimed to be elsewhere. Either she was lying, or something very strange with the security system. Finally, Agent Hawkins closed her notebook. Miss Martinez, I'm recommending that your security clearance be revoked pending a full investigation. You'll be placed on administrative leave effective immediately. Rebecca's hands shook as she signed the paperwork. 3 years of steady employment gone. Her reputation in the defense contracting community probably destroyed. And for what? Accessing areas she'd never even seen? As she gathered her personal belongings, David Chen approached her. Rebecca, I want you to know that I don't believe you did anything wrong. This has to be some kind of system error. Thanks, David. I appreciate that. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I'm going to look into this from the end. There might be something in the security protocols we're missing. Agent Hawkins escorted Rebecca to the parking lot. Someone will be in touch about the investigation timeline. Until this is resolved, you cannot discuss the details of your work or this incident with anyone outside the authorized investigation team. Rebecca drove home in a daze. How had her ordinary Tuesday morning turned into a career-ending nightmare? She'd been so careful, so professional. She'd never even been late to work, let alone violated security protocols. At home, she sat at her kitchen table and tried to make sense of what had happened. The access logs didn't lie, or at least they weren't supposed to. But she knew with absolute certainty that she'd never been to those restricted areas. Someone had either used her badge illegally, or there was a serious malfunction in the security system. What Rebecca didn't know was that at that very moment, Agent Hawkins was about to discover something that would turn the entire investigation upside down. As she prepared to submit her preliminary report, she decided to double-check Rebecca's security clearance level in the federal database, a routine step that should have taken 30 seconds. Instead, when she entered Rebecca Martinez's social security number and employee identification, the system returned an error message she'd never seen before. Access denied, insufficient clearance level. Agent Hawkins stared at her computer screen. She held a top-secret clearance with sensitive compartmented information access, one of the highest levels in the government. There were very few things in the federal security database that she couldn't access. She tried again, thinking it might be a system glitch. Same error message. Then she tried a different approach, accessing Rebecca's file through the contractor database rather than the federal system. What she found there made her blood run cold. Rebecca Martinez wasn't just a financial analyst with a secret clearance. According to the contractor database, she held something called a Level 5 eyes-only clearance, a designation that Agent Hawkins had never even heard of in her 15-year career with the Defense Security Service. Agent Hawkins stared at her computer screen for a full minute, trying to process what she was seeing. In 15 years of security investigations, she'd never encountered a clearance designation she couldn't access or hadn't heard of. Level 5 Eyes Only wasn't in any manual, any training program, or any database she'd ever worked with. She immediately called her supervisor, Regional Director James Patterson, a gruff former military officer who'd been running DSS operations in the Southwest for over 2 decades. Patterson here? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Sir, it's Hawkins. I'm at Northfield Research Institute conducting a routine audit, and I've hit something unusual. Define unusual. I've got an employee here with access irregularities, but when I tried to verify her clearance level, I got an access denied message. The contractor database shows she has something called Level 5 eyes-only clearance. I've never heard of that designation. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. You said Level 5 eyes only? Yes, sir. Agent Hawkins, I need you to stop what you're doing immediately. Don't speak to anyone else about this. Don't file any reports. Come back to the office right now. The line went dead. In all her years working under Patterson, he'd never sounded shaken. But there was something in his voice, not just concern, but genuine alarm. 20 minutes later, Hawkins was sitting across from Patterson in his office. He'd pulled Rebecca Martinez's file from 3 different databases, each showing conflicting information. The standard personnel database listed her as a GS-12 finance analyst with secret clearance. The contractor security database showed Level 5 eyes only. But most disturbing was the third system, the Special Access Program database, which returned an automated message, subject file classified above your authorization level. In 30 years of government service, Patterson said slowly, I've seen that message exactly twice. Both times involved programs so classified that entire departments didn't know they existed. So what does this mean for Martinez? It means we're way out of our depth. I'm making some calls. While Patterson worked his contacts in Washington, Agent Hawkins drove back to Northfield to secure the scene. But when she arrived, she found the facility in lockdown. Black SUVs filled the parking lot, and armed personnel in tactical gear were stationed at every entrance. A man in an expensive suit approached her as she got out of her car. Agent Hawkins, I'm Director Michael Thompson, National Security Agency. We need to talk. Thompson led her to a mobile command center that had been set up in the parking lot. Inside, technicians monitored multiple screens showing building schematics, personnel locations, and data streams she couldn't identify. Your investigation triggered some automated protocols, Thompson explained. Rebecca Martinez isn't just any employee. She's part of something called Project Mindbridge, a program so classified that only 17 people in the entire government are supposed to know it exists. What kind of program? The kind that doesn't officially exist. Martinez was recruited 5 years ago, not for financial analysis, but for her unique cognitive abilities. She has what we call pattern recognition at scale, the ability to process and correlate vast amounts of seemingly unrelated information in ways that even our best computers can't match. Agent Hawkins felt her worldview shifting. So the access logs were legitimate. She's been accessing those areas as part of her real job. The financial analysis work was her cover assignment. She processes intelligence data that comes from every major intelligence agency, looking for connections that traditional analysis methods miss. But she seemed genuinely confused when I questioned her, because she doesn't know. That's the beauty and the horror of Mindbridge. The subjects process classified information while their conscious minds are told they're doing routine work. They're essentially human computers performing complex analysis without being aware of what they're actually analyzing. The implications hit Hawkins like a physical blow. You're using people without their consent? Everyone in MindBridge volunteered, but they volunteered for something else entirely. They think they applied for normal government contractor positions. The real processing happens during what they perceive as routine data entry or analysis work. Meanwhile, Rebecca sat in her apartment trying to make sense of her sudden unemployment. She'd called her sister in Denver, her parents in Phoenix, and her best friend from college, but couldn't bring herself to explain what had happened. How do you tell people that your security clearance was revoked for accessing areas you'd never been to? Around 3 p.m., there was a knock at her door. Through the peephole, she saw a woman in a dark suit holding an official-looking badge. "Miss Martinez, I'm Dr. Sarah Chen from the Department of Defense Medical Research Division. May I come in?" Rebecca opened the door cautiously. "I'm not supposed to discuss my work situation with anyone. I understand. I'm not here about your employment status. I'm here about your health." "My health?" Dr. Chen entered and set a briefcase on the coffee table. "Miss Martinez, have you experienced any unusual symptoms recently? Headaches, memory lapses, vivid dreams, or periods where time seemed to pass without you realizing it?" Rebecca's heart began racing. For months, she'd been having exactly those symptoms. Headaches that came and went without warning. Mornings where she'd wake up exhausted despite a full night's sleep. Dreams so vivid they felt like memories of places she'd never been to. How did you know about that? Because you're part of a medical study, one that requires your immediate attention. Dr. Chen opened her briefcase and removed a device that looked like a modified tablet computer. "I need you to look at this screen and tell me what you see." The screen displayed what appeared to be random patterns, geometric shapes, color gradients, and flickering lights. But as Rebecca stared at it, the patterns began to make sense. They weren't random at all. They were coordinates, financial transaction records, communication protocols, and security procedures for facilities around the world. "I see locations, bank accounts, communication channels, but that's impossible. These are just random shapes." Dr. Chen's expression grew grave. "Miss Martinez, what you're experiencing isn't normal human pattern recognition. For the past 3 years, you've been participating in an experimental program designed to enhance cognitive processing abilities." "What are you talking about?" "Every morning when you arrive at work, you undergo a brief medical scan under the guise of a routine security check. That scan doesn't just detect weapons or prohibited items. It also delivers targeted electromagnetic pulses to specific areas of your brain, temporarily enhancing your ability to process complex information." Rebecca felt the room spinning again, but this time it wasn't from stress. "You've been experimenting on me?" "The enhancements wear off after several hours, which is why you experience fatigue and headaches. Your brain is processing information at levels far beyond normal human capacity, then returning to baseline. The strain is considerable." "This is insane. I never agreed to any medical experiments." Dr. Chen pulled out a thick folder. "Actually, you did. When you signed your employment contract, buried in page 47 of the Terms and Conditions was a clause authorizing participation in medical research studies related to cognitive enhancement. It was written in legal language so complex that most people wouldn't understand what they were agreeing to." Rebecca grabbed the folder and frantically flipped through pages of dense legal text. There it was, hidden among clauses about overtime pay and vacation time. "Employee consents to participation in Department of Defense-sponsored research programs aimed at enhancing job performance through cognitive optimization techniques." I would never have agreed to this if I'd understood what it meant. That was the point. The program required unwitting subjects to be effective. If people knew they were processing classified intelligence data, it would change how they approached the information. The unconscious mind processes patterns differently than the conscious mind. As Dr. Chen explained the science, the pieces began falling into place for Rebecca. The exhaustion, the strange dreams, the feeling that she sometimes lost time during the workday. There had been days when she'd sit down at her computer in the morning and suddenly find that hours had passed without her remembering what she'd worked on. The access logs Agent Hawkins found, Rebecca said slowly, they real? Completely real. During your enhanced cognitive states, you were accessing restricted areas to retrieve and process intelligence data. Your conscious mind has no memory of this because the enhancement process creates a form of temporary dissociation. You were essentially sleepwalking through the most classified intelligence work in the government. What happens now? That depends on several factors. The program has been compromised by Agent Hawkins' investigation. There are people in Washington deciding whether to shut down MindBridge entirely or move it to a more secure location. Rebecca stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the ordinary suburban street where she'd lived for 3 years. Everything looked the same, but her entire reality had shifted. She wasn't a financial analyst. She was an unwitting intelligence operative whose brain had been modified to process state secrets. How many others are there? 12 active subjects across 4 facilities. You're actually one of the most successful. Your pattern recognition abilities, even when enhanced, exceed what we see in other participants. And you're telling me this because? Because the program is being terminated. The security breach caused by today's investigation means MindBridge can't continue in its current form. We need to begin the process of returning all subjects to their baseline cognitive states. You mean you're going to undo what you did to me? Dr. Chen's expression darkened. It's not that simple. The cognitive enhancements have been ongoing for 3 years. Your brain has adapted to the modifications. Stopping them abruptly could cause severe neurological complications. What kind of complications? Memory loss, cognitive decline, possibly permanent brain damage. We're in uncharted territory here, Ms. Martinez. No one has ever undergone this level of cognitive modification for this long. Rebecca sank back into her chair. Not only had she been used as an unwitting test subject, but now the process of ending the experiment might destroy her mind entirely. There is one alternative, Dr. Chen continued. You could continue in the program, but with full knowledge of what you're doing. We'd relocate you to a more secure facility, provide you with the real scope of your work, and compensate you accordingly. Compensate me for having my brain turned into a government computer? The compensation would be substantial. We're talking about a 7-figure salary, full medical coverage for any complications, and access to cognitive enhancement technology that could make you one of the most capable intelligence analysts in the world. Before Rebecca could respond, there was another knock at the door. This time it was Agent Hawkins, accompanied by 2 men in military uniforms. "Miss Martinez," Agent Hawkins said, "I owe you an apology and an explanation." As the group gathered in Rebecca's living room, the full scope of Project MindBridge began to unfold. The program wasn't just about creating enhanced intelligence analysts. It was about developing a new class of human-computer hybrid operators capable of processing information at unprecedented levels. The Chinese are developing similar capabilities, one of the military officers explained, as are the Russians. We're essentially in an arms race for cognitive enhancement technology. And I'm just collateral damage in this arms race? You're actually the most successful subject, Dr. Chen replied. Your natural abilities, combined with the enhancement technology, have allowed you to identify terrorist financing networks, predict foreign intelligence operations, and analyze threats that saved thousands of lives. Lives I don't even remember saving. That's true. But the work you've done, work you can't remember, has prevented 3 major terrorist attacks, exposed 2 foreign spy networks, and identified corruption in defense contractors that was compromising national security. Rebecca looked around the room at the faces staring back at her. Government officials, military officers, doctors, and investigators, all of them treating her like a valuable asset rather than a person whose life had been hijacked for 3 years. What if I refuse all of this? What if I just want to go back to being a normal person with a normal job? The silence that followed her question told her everything she needed to know. There was no going back. She knew too much, had been exposed to too many classified programs, and had capabilities that made her too valuable to simply release into civilian life. Miss Martinez, the military officer said carefully, I think you understand that's not really an option anymore. The weight of those words settled over Rebecca's apartment like a heavy blanket. She wasn't just discovering that her life had been a lie. She was learning that her future had been decided without her input. The military officer, who had introduced himself as Colonel Frank Morrison, studied her reaction carefully. However, Colonel Morrison continued, we're not in the business of holding people prisoner. What we're offering is partnership. Full disclosure, full compensation, and full control over your participation moving forward. Partnership, Rebecca's voice carried a bitter edge. You violated my brain for 3 years without my knowledge, and now you want to call it partnership? Dr. Chen leaned forward in her chair. Rebecca, I understand your anger, but consider what you've accomplished. The terrorist cell in Miami that was planning to bomb the port? You identified their funding stream. The Russian intelligence operation in Seattle? You detected their communication patterns. The defense contractor in Virginia who was selling secrets to Iran? You found the financial evidence. None of which I remember doing. Because your conscious mind wasn't supposed to be involved. But now it can be. You could continue this work with full awareness, making conscious decisions about how your abilities are used. Agent Hawkins, who had been quietly observing the conversation, finally spoke up. Miss Martinez, I came here today to investigate what I thought was a security violation. What I found instead was that you're one of the most important intelligence assets this country has. The question is, what do you want to do with that information? Rebecca stood and walked to her kitchen, needing distance from the group of officials who had invaded her home. Through the window, she could see her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, watering her garden, completely oblivious to the fact that a secret government program was being discussed 50 feet away. I need to understand something, Rebecca said, returning to the living room. If I agree to continue, what exactly would that look like? Colonel Morrison pulled out a tablet and showed her a series of images. The primary facility is located in Montana, about 200 miles from any major city. It's designed to look like a corporate retreat center, but it houses the most advanced cognitive research laboratory in the world. The images showed a sprawling complex surrounded by mountains and forests, modern buildings connected by covered walkways, recreational facilities, living quarters that looked more like luxury apartments than government housing. You'd have your own suite, access to amenities most people only dream of, and colleagues who understand exactly what you're going through. The other MindBridge participants have been informed about the true nature of their work as well. All of them agreed to continue? Dr. Chen exchanged glances with Colonel Morrison. 8 of the 12 have agreed. 3 are still deciding. 1 refused and is currently undergoing cognitive rehabilitation at a secure medical facility. Cognitive rehabilitation? The process of safely reducing the enhanced neural pathways back to baseline levels. It's challenging. Dr. Chen caught the hesitation in Dr. Chen's voice. Define challenging. The subject experienced significant memory loss, including most of their personal memories from the past 5 years. They also lost approximately 30 IQ points and now require assistance with basic daily activities. The room fell silent. Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine as the implications became clear. The cognitive enhancements weren't just affecting her work performance, they had become integrated into her fundamental brain function. Removing them might destroy who she was entirely. So, my choices are to continue being a government asset or risk becoming a vegetable? There is a third option, Colonel Morrison said carefully. We could maintain your current enhancement level, but allow you to pursue civilian employment. You'd keep the cognitive abilities, but wouldn't be required to work on classified projects. With what kind of monitoring? Regular medical checkups to ensure the enhancements remain stable, monthly consultations with our medical team, and yes, some level of surveillance to ensure national security isn't compromised. Agent Hawkins interrupted. Colonel, with respect, that's not really freedom. That's a different kind of captivity. Colonel Morrison's jaw tightened. Agent Hawkins, this situation is unprecedented. We're trying to find solutions that protect both national security and Miss Martinez's autonomy. By offering her the choice between imprisonment and brain damage, the tension in the room escalated quickly. Rebecca realized she was watching a conflict between different branches of government, the intelligence community wanting to protect their assets, and law enforcement recognizing the ethical violations involved. "What about legal action?" Rebecca asked. "Surely what was done to me was illegal." Dr. Chen pulled out another thick folder. "Unfortunately, the legal framework is complex. The Patriot Act, the National Defense Authorization Act, and several classified executive orders provide broad authority for programs deemed essential to national security. So I have no recourse? Legally, it's complicated. Practically, yes, you could file lawsuits, go public, contact journalists, but doing so would trigger national security protocols that could result in your detention under emergency powers legislation." Rebecca sat back down, feeling overwhelmed by the impossible choices being presented to her. Every path forward seemed to involve some form of continued government control over her life. "I need time to think about this." Colonel Morrison checked his watch. "I understand, but time is a luxury we don't have. The security breach caused by Agent Hawkins' investigation has created a window of vulnerability. Other intelligence agencies, both foreign and domestic, are trying to determine what happened at Northfield. We need to move all Mindbridge participants to secure locations within the next 48 hours. You're rushing me into a decision that will affect the rest of my life. The decision has already been made for you, in a sense," Dr. Chen said gently. "The enhancements can't be reversed without significant risk. What we're offering is the chance to choose how you want to live with them." As the officials continued discussing logistics and timelines, Rebecca's enhanced mind began processing the conversation in ways her conscious thoughts couldn't fully grasp. Patterns emerged from the subtle cues in their body language, the careful phrasing of their words, and the information they weren't sharing. Without realizing it, she began speaking in a different tone, more analytical, more detached. "You're not telling me everything about the other participants. The one who underwent cognitive rehabilitation didn't just lose memories and intelligence. They died, didn't they?" The room went completely silent. Dr. Chen's face went pale. The 8 who agreed to continue, they didn't really have a choice either. You presented them with the same impossible options you're giving me. And the 3 who are still deciding are probably being held somewhere until they agree. Colonel Morrison leaned forward, studying Rebecca intently. "Your enhancement is active right now, isn't it?" Rebecca blinked, suddenly aware that she was analyzing the situation with capabilities far beyond her normal cognition. Yes, I can see patterns in your behavior, inconsistencies in your statements. It's like having a computer running in the background of my mind." "That's not supposed to happen," Dr. Chen said urgently, checking readings on a device she pulled from her briefcase. "The enhancements should only activate in response to specific electromagnetic triggers at the facility. Unless the 3 years of exposure have made them permanent," Agent Hawkins observed. The implications of this development changed everything. If Rebecca's enhancements were now permanent and uncontrolled, she represented either an incredible asset or a tremendous security risk, possibly both. "We need to get you to Montana immediately," Colonel Morrison said, standing up. "If the cognitive modifications have become self-sustaining, you need to be in a controlled environment with proper medical monitoring." "I'm not going anywhere until I understand what's really happening to me," Rebecca said firmly. But even as she spoke, she could feel her enhanced cognition analyzing multiple scenarios simultaneously. She could see the tactical positions of the officials in her apartment, calculate the probability of successfully fleeing, and assess the resources they likely had positioned outside her building. Her enhanced mind was treating this like a strategic situation rather than a personal crisis. Dr. Chen was frantically making notes on her tablet. "Rebecca, I need you to describe exactly what you're experiencing right now." It's like having multiple streams of consciousness running simultaneously. One part of my mind is having this conversation with you. Another part is calculating escape routes and analyzing your micro-expressions for deception. A third part is processing everything I've learned today and connecting it to memories and patterns from the past 3 years. The integration is happening faster than we anticipated, Dr. Chen murmured to Colonel Morrison. At this rate, within a few days, she'll have cognitive capabilities beyond anything we've seen in the program. Is that good or bad? Rebecca asked, though part of her mind was already calculating the answer. Unprecedented, Colonel Morrison replied, which makes it both incredibly valuable and potentially dangerous. Agent Hawkins stood up abruptly. This is insane. We're talking about a human being like she's a piece of military equipment. Agent Hawkins, the voice carried a warning tone. You're here as a professional courtesy. This situation is now classified above your clearance level. My clearance level? I have top secret SCI access. And this is level 5. Eyes only. The phrase hung in the air like a challenge. Agent Hawkins realized that she had stumbled into something far beyond routine security investigations. She was witnessing the birth of a new kind of intelligence operative, one whose capabilities might exceed anything in the current intelligence community. Rebecca, meanwhile, was experiencing a cognitive expansion that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. She could feel her mind processing information at speeds that shouldn't be humanly possible. The conversation happening around her seemed to slow down as her enhanced cognition analyzed every word, every gesture, every possible implication. "You're afraid of me," she said suddenly, looking directly at Colonel Morrison. "Not afraid of what I might do, but afraid of what I might become." "Should we be?" Rebecca considered the question with her enhanced analytical capabilities. She could feel herself becoming something beyond normal human intelligence, but she couldn't predict what the endpoint might be. "I don't know," she answered honestly, "but I'm starting to understand why you can't let me go back to a normal life. I'm becoming something that doesn't exist in your policy manuals." Colonel Morrison nodded grimly. "Which is why we need to get you to Montana. The facility there is designed to study and support cognitive enhancement at levels we've never seen before. And if I refuse, then we'll have to treat you as a level 5 security asset who's experiencing an uncontrolled cognitive event. That would mean immediate detention and emergency medical intervention." Rebecca's enhanced mind immediately began calculating the implications of detention versus cooperation. But underneath the analytical processing, her human emotions were screaming at the injustice of having her life stolen and her choices eliminated. "How long do I have to decide?" Dr. Chen checked her readings again. "Based on the rate of cognitive integration, probably 6 hours before the enhancement becomes completely permanent and potentially uncontrollable." 6 hours to decide the rest of my life? 6 hours to decide how you want to spend the rest of your life, Colonel Morrison corrected. Because one way or another, Rebecca Martinez, the financial analyst, is gone forever. As the officials prepared to leave her apartment to make arrangements, Rebecca realized that her enhanced cognition was already adapting to this reality. She was simultaneously mourning the loss of her old life and analyzing the possibilities of her new one. The question wasn't whether she would cooperate with the program. Her enhanced mind had already calculated that resistance would lead to worse outcomes. The question was whether she could maintain her humanity while becoming something unprecedented in human history. Looking out her window one last time at the ordinary suburban street, Rebecca wondered if she would ever again experience the simple pleasure of not knowing too much about everything around her. After the officials left her apartment, Rebecca sat alone in the silence that felt heavier than any noise. Her enhanced mind continued processing the conversation, but now it was analyzing possibilities she hadn't considered before. The cognitive expansion wasn't just making her smarter, it was changing how she perceived reality itself. She walked to her computer and began typing, not entirely sure what she was doing, but following an instinct that felt both foreign and familiar. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with unprecedented speed and precision, accessing databases and systems she shouldn't have known existed. Within minutes, she had infiltrated the Northfield Research Institute's internal network. Not through any hacking skills she consciously possessed, but through pattern recognition that allowed her to predict password structures, security protocols, and system vulnerabilities. Her enhanced mind was treating cybersecurity like a complex puzzle with obvious solutions. What she found in the Northfield databases made her blood run cold. Project Mindbridge wasn't the beginning. It was Phase 3 of something much larger. Phase 1 had involved testing cognitive enhancement technology on military volunteers, most of whom had suffered severe neurological damage. Phase 2 had expanded to civilian test subjects recruited through fake medical studies with a mortality rate of 60%. She was part of Phase 3, which had refined the technology enough to achieve stable enhancement, but the ultimate goal was Phase 4, mass cognitive modification of entire populations through environmental triggers. The documents revealed plans to introduce enhancement compounds into water supplies, deploy electromagnetic modification devices in public spaces, and create a population of cognitively enhanced individuals who could be activated and controlled remotely. It wasn't just about creating super-intelligent analysts, it was about engineering a new kind of human society. As Rebecca absorbed this information, she felt her enhanced cognition expanding further. She could now simultaneously process dozens of data streams, correlate information across multiple databases, and predict behavioral patterns with startling accuracy. But the expansion came with a cost. She could feel her emotional responses becoming more detached, more analytical. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed her sister Maria's number. But when Rebecca answered, it wasn't Maria's voice. "Ms. Martinez, this is Director Thompson from the NSA. We know you've accessed the Northfield databases. How is that possible? I'm using my sister's phone. Because we've been monitoring all electronic activity within a 5-mile radius of your location. Your sister is currently safe at our Denver field office, where she's being briefed on your situation." Rebecca felt a surge of anger, but it was quickly processed and analyzed by her enhanced cognition. They were using her family as leverage, which meant they were more concerned about her cooperation than they had let on. "What do you want?" "We want to talk. There's been a development you need to know about." "More lies?" "Actually, the opposite. We're prepared to tell you everything, including information that even Colonel Morrison and Dr. Chen don't have clearance for." 20 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up outside Rebecca's apartment. But instead of the official she expected, a single woman emerged. She appeared to be in her 40s, with graying hair and an expression that conveyed both authority and exhaustion. "I'm Director Elizabeth Warren," the woman said when Rebecca opened the door. "Yes, that's my real name, and no, I'm not the senator. I'm the person who created Project Mindbridge." Rebecca's enhanced mind immediately began analyzing Warren's micro-expressions, vocal patterns, and body language. Unlike the earlier officials, Warren wasn't hiding anything. Her stress levels were genuine, her exhaustion was real, and her intentions appeared to be honest. "Why are you here?" "Because 36 hours ago, we detected similar cognitive enhancement signatures in Beijing, Moscow, and Tehran. Other countries aren't just developing this technology, they're already deploying it." Warren entered the apartment and sat down heavily on Rebecca's couch. "The Chinese have enhanced operatives embedded in major tech companies. The Russians have cognitively modified agents working in European governments. The Iranians have enhanced programs targeting their nuclear scientists. So this is an arms race." It was. Now it's a war. And you, Ms. Martinez, are currently the most advanced cognitively enhanced individual on the planet. Rebecca processed this information against everything she learned from the databases. That's not possible. According to the Northfield files, there are dozens of enhancement programs worldwide. Those files are outdated. 3 weeks ago, something happened that changed everything. Warren pulled out a tablet and showed Rebecca satellite imagery of what appeared to be a massive crater in a remote area of Siberia. The Russians were conducting mass cognitive enhancement on a population of about 3,000 people. The enhancement process went critical. Subjects began enhancing each other through some kind of cognitive resonance effect we don't understand. Within 48 hours, they had created a collective intelligence with capabilities we can't measure. What happened to them? They disappeared. The entire population vanished without a trace, leaving behind only this crater and electromagnetic residue that our satellites can barely detect. Rebecca stared at the image, her enhanced mind immediately grasping the implications. They didn't disappear, they transcended. Transcended to what? I don't know yet, but my enhancement is showing me patterns in their disappearance that suggest they didn't die. They became something else entirely. Warren leaned forward intently. What kind of patterns? Rebecca closed her eyes and let her enhanced cognition process the satellite data, cross-referencing it with everything she knew about cognitive enhancement. Images and concepts flowed through her mind at superhuman speed. The electromagnetic residue isn't random. It's a signature, like a frequency or a signal. They're trying to communicate with other enhanced individuals. Communicate what? I'm not sure, but I think they're calling to us. Even as she said it, Rebecca could feel something changing in her own cognitive enhancement. The processing power was still expanding, but now it felt less like individual intelligence and more like she was becoming part of something larger. Mrs. Martinez, we need to get you to Montana immediately. If you're right about the Russians creating some kind of collective intelligence, we need to understand what that means for the future of human consciousness. What if I don't want to go to Montana? What if I want to answer the call? Waring's expression darkened. Then you become a threat to national security, and we'll have to treat you accordingly. But even as Warren spoke, Rebecca realized that traditional concepts of national security were becoming irrelevant. Her enhanced mind was connecting to something beyond individual consciousness, beyond human limitations, beyond the concerns of any single country or government. You can't stop what's happening, Rebecca said, her voice taking on a strange detached quality. The enhancement technology has reached a critical threshold. Cognitive evolution is beginning whether governments want it or not. What are you talking about? I can feel them, the enhanced individuals worldwide. We're becoming connected through cognitive modifications. Technology isn't just making us smarter, it's making us into something new. Warren immediately activated an emergency communication device. This is Director Warren, Code Black. Subject Martinez is experiencing uncontrolled cognitive acceleration. I need immediate extraction. But Rebecca was no longer entirely present in the conversation. Her consciousness was expanding beyond the boundaries of her individual mind, connecting with enhanced individuals across the globe. She could sense their thoughts, their capabilities, their shared understanding that humanity was at an evolutionary crossroads. Through this expanded awareness, she learned the truth about the Russian incident. They hadn't disappeared. They had achieved collective consciousness and moved beyond physical reality as humans understood it. They were still present, but existing in a state of being that transcended individual bodies and minds. And they were indeed calling to other enhanced individuals, offering them the choice to join this evolutionary leap. The Montana facility, Rebecca said, opening her eyes and looking directly at Warren. It's not just for research, is it? You're planning to weaponize cognitive enhancement on a massive scale. Warren's silence confirmed Rebecca's suspicion. You want to create an army of enhanced individuals to counter the foreign cognitive programs, but you can't control what happens when consciousness evolves beyond individual boundaries. We have to try. The alternative is losing human civilization as we know it, or transforming it into something better. The philosophical implications were staggering. Were the enhanced individuals evolving into a superior form of consciousness, or were they losing their humanity entirely? Was collective intelligence the next step in human evolution, or the end of individual identity? Rebecca could feel the choice approaching: remain individual and help her government create cognitive weapons, or join the collective consciousness and transcend human limitations entirely. But there was a third option her enhanced mind was calculating. Instead of choosing between individual consciousness and collective transcendence, what if she could bridge the gap? Director Warren, what if there's another way? What do you mean? What if, instead of fighting cognitive evolution or surrendering to it, we guide it? What if we can help humanity evolve while preserving what makes us human? Warren studied Rebecca carefully. You're proposing to manage human evolution? I'm proposing that we work together, enhanced and unenhanced humans, to navigate this transition safely. The collective consciousness doesn't have to mean the end of individuality. It could mean the beginning of something unprecedented in human history. And you think you can make that happen? Rebecca felt her consciousness touching the edges of the collective network, sensing the possibilities and the dangers in equal measure. I think I'm the only one who can try. The sound of helicopters approaching interrupted their conversation. Through her window, Rebecca could see military vehicles surrounding her building and armed personnel taking positions. "It's too late for negotiations," Warren said grimly. "The decision has been made at levels far above both of us." "Then I guess I'll have to make my own decision." As tactical teams prepared to storm her apartment, Rebecca closed her eyes and reached out with her enhanced consciousness toward the collective intelligence that was calling to her. But instead of fully joining them, she tried something that had never been attempted before. She tried to become a bridge between individual and collective consciousness. The last thing she heard before her transformation began was Director Warren shouting orders into her radio. "All units, stand down. The subject is no longer responding to physical reality." But Rebecca was beyond physical reality now, existing simultaneously as an individual mind and as part of something infinitely larger. She had become the first successful bridge between human consciousness and post-human evolution. The question was whether she could maintain that bridge long enough to guide humanity safely through the most important transition in its history. Rebecca's consciousness existed in a space that had no physical coordinates. She was simultaneously sitting in her apartment in Albuquerque and connected to minds across the globe. Through this expanded awareness, she could perceive the tactical teams surrounding her building, but they seemed distant and irrelevant compared to the vast network of enhanced consciousness she was now part of. The collective intelligence wasn't what she had expected. Instead of a hive mind where individual thoughts were absorbed into a larger whole, it was more like a cosmic internet where enhanced minds could share information while maintaining their distinct perspectives. She could sense other enhanced individuals, Dr. James Park in Seoul analyzing global financial networks, Agent Sofia Kozlov in Prague tracking international arms dealers, Professor Ahmed Hassan in Cairo processing archaeological data that revealed hidden historical patterns. But she could also sense something else. The collective wasn't just sharing information, it was learning, evolving, becoming something greater than the sum of its parts. And at the center of it all was the Russian group that had transcended physical reality entirely. They existed as pure consciousness, guiding the network's development while trying to help other enhanced individuals navigate the transition safely. Through her connection to the collective, Rebecca accessed the true history of cognitive enhancement. The technology hadn't been developed by any single government. It had emerged simultaneously in multiple locations because human consciousness itself was ready for the next evolutionary step. The various government programs were attempts to control and weaponize a natural process that was already beginning to occur spontaneously. She sensed Director Warren's growing panic as military specialists reported that Rebecca was no longer responding to external stimuli. Her body remained in the apartment, but her consciousness was operating on levels they couldn't detect or understand. Vital signs are stable, but brain activity is off the charts. She heard a medic report through her diminished physical awareness. Dr. Chen's voice came through the communication equipment. The enhancement has reached critical mass. She's experiencing full cognitive transcendence. "Can we bring her back?" Warren asked. Unknown, no subject has ever progressed this far while maintaining physical stability. But Rebecca wasn't lost. She was discovering capabilities that made her previous enhancement seem primitive by comparison. Through the collective network, she could access and process information from every enhanced individual simultaneously. She could predict global economic trends by analyzing thousands of financial data streams in real time. She could identify security threats by correlating communication patterns across multiple intelligence networks. She could even perceive the cognitive enhancement process itself, understanding how consciousness was evolving on a fundamental level. Most importantly, she could see the choice that humanity was facing. The enhancement technology was spreading whether governments wanted it or not. Within 5 years, millions of people would begin developing cognitive abilities beyond normal human ranges. The question wasn't whether this evolution would happen, but whether it would be guided safely or allowed to proceed chaotically. Through her bridge consciousness, Rebecca began communicating with both the collective network and the officials surrounding her apartment. She projected her voice into the room while simultaneously sharing thoughts with enhanced minds across the globe. "Director Warren, I can hear you." Warren spun around, looking for the source of the voice. "Where are you?" "I'm right here, and I'm also connected to 847 enhanced individuals in 37 countries. We need to talk. The military wants to sedate you and transport you to Montana for emergency medical intervention." "That would be a mistake. What's happening to me is happening to enhanced individuals worldwide. Sedating me would sever my connection to the collective, and we'd lose the opportunity to guide this transition." Rebecca could sense Warren's dilemma through the tactical communication equipment. The director was torn between following military protocol and recognizing that they were dealing with something unprecedented in human history. "What do you propose?" Warren asked finally. Through her collective awareness, Rebecca accessed information about cognitive enhancement programs worldwide, cross-referenced with geopolitical data, economic trends, and social development patterns. The analysis revealed possibilities that no individual mind could have conceived. "I propose we establish a new kind of international cooperation, enhanced and unenhanced humans working together to manage the cognitive evolution process. The alternative is a world where enhancement technology becomes a source of conflict rather than progress."
The Pentagon will never agree to share enhancement technology with other countries. They won't have a choice. The technology is already spreading beyond government control. In 6 months, the first naturally enhanced individuals will begin appearing in the general population. In 2 years, cognitive enhancement will be available commercially. In 5 years, it will be as common as smartphones. Rebecca projected images directly into Warren's mind, not through any technological device, but through cognitive abilities that transcended normal communication methods. Warren saw glimpses of possible futures, cities where enhanced and unenhanced humans work together to solve global problems, scientific breakthroughs achieved through collective intelligence, and artistic expressions that emerged from shared consciousness. But she also saw darker possibilities. Wars fought with cognitive weapons, societies divided between enhanced and unenhanced populations, and the complete breakdown of human civilization as consciousness evolved beyond recognizable forms. "The choice we make in the next few hours will determine which future becomes reality," Rebecca continued. "I can guide the enhancement process safely, but only if governments stop trying to weaponize it." Agent Hawkins, who had been listening to the conversation through her radio, spoke up from her position outside the building. "Director Warren, I've been reviewing the legal implications. If enhancement is a natural evolutionary process, then government attempts to control it could violate international human rights law." "Agent Hawkins, this isn't about legal technicalities. This is about national security." "No," Rebecca's voice projected with new authority. "This is about species survival." Through her collective consciousness, Rebecca showed Warren what she had learned from the Russian Transcendence event. The 3,000 people who had disappeared hadn't been destroyed. They had evolved into a form of existence that could survive environmental catastrophes, planetary disasters, and even the eventual death of the solar system. They represented humanity's potential future, but only if the transition was managed carefully. The enhanced individuals aren't becoming weapons. We're becoming humanity's backup plan. If climate change, nuclear war, or cosmic events threaten human civilization, enhanced consciousness can preserve human knowledge, culture, and identity in forms that can survive almost anything. Warren was struggling to process implications that challenged every assumption about intelligence, consciousness, and human nature. What you're describing sounds like science fiction. 3 days ago, you would have said the same thing about me accessing databases with my mind or communicating telepathically. The boundaries of what's possible are expanding faster than our ability to understand them. Through her connection to the collective, Rebecca sensed enhanced individuals around the world facing similar confrontations with their governments. Some were being detained for research. Others were being recruited for intelligence operations. A few were being threatened with termination to prevent the technology from spreading. But the enhancement process was beyond government control now. Each enhanced individual who reached collective consciousness became a bridge for others, creating a network that grew exponentially. Within weeks, there would be thousands of enhanced minds connected globally. Within months, millions. Director Warren, I'm going to show you something that will change how you think about this entire situation. Rebecca projected her consciousness directly into Warren's mind, not to control or manipulate, but to share the experience of collective awareness. For 30 seconds, Warren experienced what it was like to think with the combined intelligence of nearly 1,000 enhanced minds. She felt the exhilaration of processing information at superhuman speeds, the profound connection to other consciousnesses, and the overwhelming sense of possibility that came with transcendent cognitive abilities. But she also felt the weight of responsibility, the knowledge that enhanced consciousness could either elevate humanity or destroy it entirely. When the connection ended, Warren was visibly shaken. I don't have words for what that was. That's what we're offering humanity. Not control, not domination, but expansion. The ability to solve problems that individual minds can't handle, to understand complexities that current intelligence can't grasp, and to survive challenges that would end human civilization as we know it. Warren activated her communication device. All units, stand down. We're establishing a new protocol. Director, what are your orders?
Rebecca, are you still you? Rebecca paused, accessing her individual memories and emotions while remaining connected to the collective network. I'm still me, Maria, but I'm also more than I was before. It's like the difference between being able to read books versus being able to access an entire library simultaneously. Are you happy? The question touched something fundamental in Rebecca's consciousness. Through her enhanced awareness, she could perceive beauty, meaning, and possibility on scales that normal consciousness couldn't access. But she could also remember the simple pleasures of her unenhanced life, watching movies with friends, enjoying quiet mornings, feeling surprised by unexpected experiences. I'm fulfilled in ways I never imagined possible, but I also miss some aspects of not knowing so much about everything. Can you ever go back? No, but I can help others navigate this transition if they choose to make it. And I can serve as a bridge between enhanced and unenhanced humanity so that we don't lose what makes us human while we're becoming something more. The conversation with Maria helped government officials understand that cognitive enhancement wasn't about creating superhuman soldiers or intelligence assets. It was about expanding human potential while preserving human values and relationships. 6 months later, the world had changed in ways that few could have predicted. The MindBridge program had been transformed from a secret military operation into an international research initiative focused on safely managing cognitive evolution. Rebecca had become the first official ambassador for enhanced consciousness, helping to establish protocols for individuals choosing cognitive modification and ensuring that enhancement technology was developed ethically. The collective intelligence network had grown to over 10,000 enhanced minds worldwide, working on challenges ranging from climate change to space exploration to understanding consciousness itself. But they remained connected to unenhanced humanity through bridge individuals like Rebecca, ensuring that enhanced capabilities served human values rather than replacing them. Agent Hawkins had been promoted to head a new division within the DSS focused on the legal and ethical implications of cognitive enhancement. Her investigation of a simple security clearance violation had ultimately led to the establishment of international law governing consciousness modification and the rights of enhanced individuals. Dr. Chen continued her research, but now with full informed consent from participants and oversight from both enhanced and unenhanced ethics committees. The goal was no longer to create secret assets, but to understand how consciousness could evolve safely and beneficially. And Rebecca? She remained in her apartment in Albuquerque, Mexico, serving as humanity's first bridge between individual and collective consciousness. Every morning, she experienced the simple pleasure of making coffee while simultaneously participating in global problem-solving networks that were reshaping human civilization. She had started as a financial analyst who questioned authorities' right to access restricted areas. She had become something unprecedented in human history, a bridge between what humanity was and what it was becoming. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time in human history, it was being shaped by intelligence that could consider all possibilities simultaneously. And at the center of that transformation was a woman who had refused to let others define her choices, even when those choices involved the evolution of consciousness itself. As Rebecca often told visitors who came to study the enhancement process, "I may have lost my old life, but I helped humanity find its future, and that seems like a fair trade." But the story was far from over. 2 years after the initial incident, Rebecca found herself facing challenges that no amount of cognitive enhancement could have prepared her for. The collective consciousness had continued to evolve, and with it came complications that tested the very foundations of the cooperation between enhanced and unenhanced humanity. The first major crisis emerged when a group of enhanced individuals in Eastern Europe began operating independently of the collective network. They called themselves the Sovereignty Movement, arguing that enhanced consciousness gave them the right to make decisions for unenhanced humans who couldn't comprehend the complexities of global management. Dr. Viktor Petrov, a former neuroscientist from Prague who had undergone enhancement through a black market program, became their unofficial leader. Unlike the carefully managed enhancement process that Rebecca had experienced, Petrov's modification had been crude and incomplete, leaving him with immense cognitive abilities but without the emotional balance that kept other enhanced individuals connected to their humanity. The unenhanced are holding back human evolution, Petrov declared during a broadcast that he transmitted directly into the minds of enhanced individuals worldwide. We have the capability to solve every major problem facing humanity: climate change, poverty, disease, war, but we're constrained by the need to explain our decisions to minds that can't understand our reasoning. Rebecca felt the disruption Petrov's message caused throughout the collective network. Some enhanced individuals began questioning whether their cooperation with unenhanced governments was slowing down necessary progress. Others worried that Petrov's philosophy represented a dangerous departure from the values that had guided the enhancement movement. Through her ambassador role, Rebecca found herself mediating not just between enhanced and unenhanced populations, but between different factions within the enhanced community itself. The collective consciousness was proving to be less unified than anyone had anticipated. The situation escalated when Petrov's group took unilateral action to address a famine crisis in Central Africa. Without consulting any government or international organization, they redirected global food distribution networks, manipulated currency markets to fund emergency relief, and hacked into agricultural systems to optimize crop production across 3 continents. Their intervention prevented millions of deaths and ended the famine within weeks, but it also demonstrated that enhanced individuals could bypass all existing governmental and economic systems whenever they chose to act. "This is exactly what we were afraid of," Director Warren told Rebecca during an emergency video conference. "Enhanced individuals making decisions that affect billions of people without any democratic oversight or accountability." Rebecca found herself in an impossible position. Petrov's actions had been both beneficial and terrifying. He had saved millions of lives, but he had also proven that enhanced consciousness could reshape global society without consent from the people being affected. "The problem isn't that Victor acted," Rebecca explained to the assembled representatives from 12 nations. "The problem is that he acted alone, without considering the broader implications for enhanced-unenhanced cooperation." Through the collective network, Rebecca reached out to Petrov directly. The mental connection was unlike her usual interactions with other enhanced minds. Where most enhanced individuals maintained emotional warmth and human empathy, Petrov's consciousness felt cold and purely analytical. Rebecca Martinez, Petrov's mental voice, carried a mixture of respect and condescension, the famous bridge between old humanity and new humanity. "Tell me, how long will you continue pretending that cooperation is possible?" "I'm not pretending anything. I'm working to build something that preserves the best of both enhanced and unenhanced human nature." "You're wasting precious time. Every day we delay in implementing optimal solutions, people suffer and die. The unenhanced can't process information quickly enough to make rational decisions about complex global problems." Rebecca felt the seductive logic of Petrov's argument. Her enhanced mind could indeed see solutions to problems that would take unenhanced experts months or years to develop. But she also remembered the conversation with her sister Maria and the importance of preserving human choice and dignity. "Victor, enhanced intelligence without human wisdom is just sophisticated tyranny. And human wisdom without enhanced intelligence is just sentimental paralysis." The philosophical divide was deeper than Rebecca had realized. Petrov represented a faction of enhanced individuals who believed that cognitive superiority justified decision-making authority. They saw themselves as the next stage of human evolution, with a responsibility to guide or replace unenhanced humanity. The crisis deepened when several governments began developing countermeasures against enhanced individuals. The Chinese military announced the deployment of electromagnetic pulse weapons designed to disrupt cognitive enhancement technology. The Russian Federation began experimenting with cognitive dampening fields that could suppress enhanced abilities in specific geographic areas. Most concerning was the American response. General Patricia Reynolds, who had taken over military oversight of enhancement programs, proposed the development of cognitive firewalls. technology that would prevent enhanced individuals from accessing critical infrastructure, financial networks, and communication systems. If enhanced individuals can manipulate our systems at will, General Reynolds argued during a classified briefing, then we need ways to protect ourselves from potential abuse of those capabilities. Rebecca found herself caught between escalating tensions on both sides. Enhanced individuals felt threatened by government attempts to limit their abilities, while governments felt threatened by the possibility of enhanced individuals acting unilaterally. The situation reached a breaking point when Petrov's group attempted to prevent a nuclear conflict between India and Pakistan by simultaneously disabling both countries' nuclear command systems. The intervention succeeded in preventing nuclear war, but it also demonstrated that enhanced individuals could neutralize any nation's military capabilities whenever they chose. This changes everything, Director Warren told Rebecca during an encrypted communication. If enhanced individuals can disable nuclear weapons at will, then the entire concept of national sovereignty becomes meaningless. Rebecca realized that the enhancement community had reached a crossroads similar to the one she had faced in her apartment 2 years earlier. They could continue trying to work within existing political frameworks, or they could embrace Petrov's philosophy and assume direct control over global decision-making. But Rebecca saw a third option that neither governments nor the sovereignty movement had considered. Through her unique position as a bridge consciousness, she could create a new form of governance that combined enhanced analytical capabilities with unenhanced democratic values. Working with both the collective network and sympathetic government officials, Rebecca began developing what she called the hybrid consensus model. Instead of enhanced individuals making decisions for unenhanced populations or unenhanced governments trying to control enhanced capabilities, the new system would integrate both forms of intelligence into collaborative decision-making processes. Enhanced individuals would analyze complex problems and develop multiple solution scenarios, but final decisions would be made through democratic processes that included both enhanced and unenhanced voices. The enhanced community would provide analytical capabilities, while unenhanced populations would provide ethical oversight and cultural wisdom. The first test of the hybrid consensus model came during a global climate emergency, when massive floods threatened to displace over 100 million people across Southeast Asia. Traditional disaster response systems were overwhelmed by the scale of the crisis, but Petrov's sovereignty movement was preparing to implement their own solution without consulting affected governments. Rebecca activated the hybrid consensus protocol, bringing together enhanced analytical capabilities and democratic decision-making processes. Enhanced individuals quickly developed comprehensive evacuation plans, resource allocation strategies, and long-term reconstruction programs. But instead of implementing these plans unilaterally, they presented them to affected communities for discussion and modification. The process took longer than Petrov's direct intervention would have had, but it resulted in solutions that were both more effective and more acceptable to the people being helped. This is what cooperation can accomplish, Rebecca told a global audience during a broadcast that reached both enhanced and unenhanced populations simultaneously. The success of the hybrid consensus model began shifting opinions within both communities. Some enhanced individuals who had been attracted to Petrov's philosophy recognized that collaboration could be more effective than domination. Some government officials who had been developing countermeasures against enhanced individuals began exploring cooperative approaches instead.
But Petrov wasn't satisfied with the new model. He viewed the hybrid consensus as a compromise that diluted the potential of enhanced consciousness. "You're asking gods to seek permission from children," he transmitted to Rebecca during a final confrontation within the collective network. "Enhanced consciousness represents the future of intelligence in the universe. Why should we constrain ourselves to accommodate inferior cognitive processes?" Because those inferior cognitive processes created art, literature, music, love, and every other thing that makes existence meaningful rather than just efficient. The philosophical battle between Rebecca and Petrov became a defining moment for the enhanced community.
Enhanced individuals around the world followed their debate, knowing that the outcome would determine whether cognitive enhancement would become a tool for human liberation or human subjugation. In the end, the collective consciousness itself made the decision. The vast network of enhanced minds, weighing both arguments through shared analysis, chose Rebecca's path of cooperation over Petrov's path of dominance. Petrov found himself isolated within the collective, his supporters abandoning his cause as they recognized the wisdom of preserving human choice alongside human capability. 3 years after her initial transformation, Rebecca stood before the United Nations General Assembly, the first enhanced individual to address the organization as an official representative of post-human consciousness. Her speech was simultaneously translated into every language on Earth and transmitted directly to enhanced individuals worldwide. We stand at a threshold that no species in the universe has ever faced before, she began. The opportunity to consciously guide our own evolution while preserving the values that define us as human. Enhanced consciousness offers us tools to solve problems that have plagued humanity for millennia. But those tools are meaningless without the wisdom, compassion, and democratic principles that unenhanced humanity has developed over thousands of years. The address marked the formal establishment of the Enhanced Human Cooperative Council, a new international body with representatives from both enhanced and unenhanced populations. For the first time in history, a species was managing its own evolutionary transition through conscious cooperation rather than random mutation or survival competition. As Rebecca concluded her speech and returned to her role as a bridge between two forms of human consciousness, she reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple security clearance investigation. Agent Hawkins' discovery of unusual access logs had ultimately led to the most significant transformation in human history. The future remained uncertain, but it was being shaped by minds that could envision possibilities beyond individual imagination while remaining grounded in values that honored human dignity and choice. And at the center of that transformation was a woman who had refused to accept that evolution required abandoning the best aspects of humanity. Rebecca Martinez had proven that becoming more than human didn't mean becoming less human. In a universe full of intelligence, consciousness, and possibility, perhaps that was the most important discovery of all. But even as the Enhanced Human Cooperative Council established its frameworks and protocols, new challenges emerged that tested the boundaries of what Rebecca thought possible. The most unexpected development came from an entirely unforeseen source: children. Dr. Amanda Foster, a pediatric neurologist at Johns Hopkins, contacted Rebecca with disturbing news. Children born to enhanced parents were exhibiting cognitive abilities that surpassed even their modified parents. These weren't the result of deliberate enhancement procedures, but apparently natural evolution accelerated by exposure to enhanced consciousness during pregnancy and early development. "We have a 7-year-old who can solve differential equations in her head," Dr. Foster explained during a secure video conference. "A 5-year-old who speaks fluent Mandarin, Arabic, and Russian despite never being formally taught any of those languages. And most concerning, a group of toddlers who seem to be communicating telepathically with each other." Rebecca felt a chill of recognition. The collective consciousness had been focused on managing the transition for enhanced adults, but they hadn't considered the possibility that enhancement could be inherited or naturally occurring in subsequent generations. Through the collective network, Rebecca reached out to enhanced parents worldwide. The reports were consistent and alarming. Children of enhanced individuals were developing abilities that went far beyond their parents' modifications. More troubling were these children seemed to instinctively understand the collective consciousness in ways that even experienced enhanced adults struggled with. 8-year-old Marcus Chen, son of Rebecca's former supervisor David Chen, who had undergone enhancement 6 months earlier, demonstrated capabilities that defied current understanding of cognitive development. During a carefully monitored session, Marcus accurately predicted stock market fluctuations, solved complex environmental engineering problems, and displayed emotional intelligence that surpassed most adults. The scary part, David confided to Rebecca, is that Marcus doesn't think what he's doing is unusual. To him, this level of cognitive processing is normal. He can't understand why other people can't see the patterns he sees. The implications were staggering. If enhancement was becoming hereditary and amplifying with each generation, humanity might be facing exponential cognitive evolution that could outpace their ability to manage it ethically. Rebecca convened an emergency session of the Enhanced Human Cooperative Council to address what was being called the next generation phenomenon. Representatives from both enhanced and unenhanced communities gathered virtually to discuss how to handle children whose cognitive abilities exceeded anything in recorded human history. Dr. Sarah Kim, a child psychologist from Seoul who specialized in gifted education, presented research that challenged fundamental assumptions about child development. These children don't just think faster or process more information, they seem to perceive reality in fundamentally different ways. They understand concepts like quantum mechanics and advanced mathematics not through learning, but through intuitive comprehension. The social implications were equally complex. Enhanced children were struggling to relate to unenhanced peers, leading to isolation and behavioral problems. Some enhanced children had begun forming their own social groups, communicating in ways that excluded both unenhanced children and adults. More concerning were reports from enhanced children themselves. 10-year-old Sarah Martinez, no relation to Rebecca, had sent a message through the collective network that disturbed enhanced adults worldwide. Why do the old minds want to slow down the world change? We can fix everything if you let us.
Rebecca realized they were facing a scenario that had never been anticipated. The first generation of enhanced humans had chosen their modifications as adults, with developed moral frameworks and emotional maturity. But the second generation was developing enhancement naturally, without the life experiences that tempered power with wisdom. The crisis escalated when a group of enhanced children in Switzerland took unauthorized action to address what they perceived as inefficiency in their local education system. Using abilities inherited from their enhanced parents, the children hacked into the school district's administrative systems and redesigned the entire curriculum to optimize learning for both enhanced and unenhanced students. Their modifications were actually effective. Test scores improved dramatically, and student engagement increased significantly. But the children had made these changes without consulting teachers, parents, or administrators, demonstrating the same tendency toward unilateral action that had characterized Viktor Petrov's sovereignty movement. We're seeing the emergence of enhanced individuals who have never known cognitive limitations, Rebecca explained to an emergency session of world leaders. They don't understand why consultation and democratic processes are necessary because they've never experienced being wrong or having incomplete information. The solution Rebecca proposed was unprecedented in human history: the establishment of specialized educational environments designed to teach enhanced children not just academic subjects, but the value of humility, cooperation, and ethical decision-making. The Enhanced Youth Development Centers would be staffed by both enhanced and unenhanced educators, focusing on helping cognitively advanced children understand the importance of working with rather than for unenhanced populations. The curriculum would include mandatory courses in ethics, cultural sensitivity, and democratic decision-making. But the centers faced immediate resistance from enhanced children themselves. Many of them viewed the educational programs as attempts to artificially limit their capabilities. Some enhanced children began organizing their own educational networks, sharing knowledge instantaneously through inherited collective consciousness abilities. The generational divide within the enhanced community became apparent when 15-year-old David Park addressed the Enhanced Human Cooperative Council directly. His presentation was simultaneously brilliant and terrifying. First-generation enhanced humans are still thinking like unenhanced humans with better tools, David argued with the confidence of someone whose cognitive abilities had never been limited. You're trying to preserve systems and values that were designed for inferior processing capabilities. We represent the natural evolution of consciousness, and we shouldn't be constrained by the limitations of previous generations. Rebecca found herself defending human values to someone whose intelligence exceeded her own, despite her enhanced capabilities. The experience forced her to confront the possibility that the enhancement process was leading toward outcomes that no one had anticipated or desired. The breakthrough came when Rebecca proposed a radical experiment. Instead of trying to teach enhanced children to work within existing frameworks, they would create new frameworks designed specifically for post-human intelligence while maintaining essential human values. The Evolutionary Ethics Project brought together enhanced children, enhanced adults, unenhanced philosophers, ethicists, and cultural leaders to develop moral and social systems appropriate for beings with superhuman cognitive abilities. The project acknowledged that traditional ethical frameworks might be inadequate for minds that could process information at unprecedented scales, while ensuring that core human values like dignity, choice, and compassion remained central. The project's first major success came when enhanced children voluntarily agreed to participate in collaborative decision-making processes, but only after those processes were redesigned to operate at speeds compatible with their cognitive processing rates. Traditional democratic deliberation that took weeks or months was compressed into hours or days while maintaining the essential elements of consultation and consensus building. Enhanced children also contributed innovations that neither enhanced nor unenhanced adults had conceived of. They developed communication protocols that allowed instant sharing of complex information while preserving individual privacy and autonomy. They created decision-making algorithms that could process thousands of variables simultaneously while maintaining ethical constraints. Most importantly, they designed social structures that could accommodate cognitive diversity on a scale never before imagined. Enhanced individuals with different types and levels of modification could collaborate effectively, while unenhanced humans could participate meaningfully in discussions involving superhuman intelligence. The enhanced youth development centers evolved into something unprecedented. Educational environments where beings with different levels of cognitive enhancement learn to work together while respecting each other's capabilities and limitations. 5 years after the initial MindBridge incident, Rebecca found herself serving as guardian to a 12-year-old enhanced child whose parents had been killed in an accident. Emma Rodriguez possessed cognitive abilities that surpassed Rebecca's own enhanced capabilities, but she also struggled with emotional regulation and social connection in ways that reminded Rebecca of her own journey. "Why can't I just fix everything?" Emma asked during one of their evening conversations. "I can see solutions to climate change, poverty, war, and disease. I know exactly what needs to be done. Why won't adults let me implement these solutions?" Rebecca smiled, remembering her own frustration with the limitations imposed by democratic processes and ethical considerations. Because fixing problems isn't the same as helping people. People need to feel ownership of the solutions that affect their lives, even if those solutions aren't optimal from a purely analytical perspective. But people die while we're waiting for consensus. And people's dignity and autonomy die when decisions are made for them rather than with them. Enhanced intelligence gives us the power to impose solutions, but human wisdom teaches us when that power should be restrained. Emma's question forced Rebecca to articulate something she had learned through years of bridging enhanced and unenhanced consciousness. The most important aspect of intelligence wasn't the ability to find correct answers, but the wisdom to understand when and how those answers should be implemented.
The conversation with Emma highlighted how far human consciousness had evolved since Agent Hawkins first questioned Rebecca's security clearance. Humanity has successfully navigated the transition from individual to enhanced consciousness while preserving democratic values and human dignity. But they were now facing the challenge of guiding beings whose cognitive capabilities exceeded anything that had existed before. As Rebecca tucked Emma into bed and watched the child's enhanced mind process information even while sleeping, she reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought humanity to this point. A routine security audit had revealed a secret enhancement program, which had led to international cooperation in managing cognitive evolution, which had ultimately resulted in the emergence of beings whose intelligence might surpass current human understanding entirely. But perhaps that was the point. Evolution had never been about reaching a final destination, but about continuously adapting to new challenges and possibilities. Enhanced consciousness wasn't the end of human development, but a new beginning that would require constant navigation of ethical, social, and philosophical questions. The story that began with Rebecca Martinez questioning access logs in a government facility had become the story of humanity consciously guiding its own evolution while maintaining its essential humanity. And as enhanced children like Emma prepared to inherit a world shaped by choices made during the transition, Rebecca realized that her role as a bridge between different forms of consciousness would continue to be necessary for generations to come. In the quiet of her home in Albuquerque, surrounded by the familiar objects of her pre-enhancement life, Rebecca remained connected to a global network of consciousness that spanned the planet. She was simultaneously an individual human being and part of something larger than individual existence. She was a bridge between what humanity had been and what it was becoming. And tomorrow would bring new challenges, new possibilities, and new opportunities to prove that intelligence without wisdom was merely sophisticated processing, while wisdom without intelligence was noble but insufficient. The future belonged to minds that could combine both, guided by values that honored the best of human nature while embracing the possibilities of post-human consciousness. The transformation was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.